Hey, it's Matt Pinfield here, and joining me now is Mary Lou Lord. Mary, good to have you here on the show. Let's talk a bit about, the fact that there was a lot of time in between this album, and in fact, the signing to work and the stuff that you did with Kill Rock Stars. There was quite a bidding war. How was that for you? Was it kind of a pain, or was it?
No, I think it was kind of fun. I got to meet a lot of interesting people in the music business, and I would just kind of go and have these dinners with people and talk about music, which is something I love. And sometimes, I would meet some people and it would be quite obvious to me that they wouldn't really be getting it, and I'd kind of shy away from them and move on to the next gang. And at the time, there was a lot of shuffling going around in the music industry, a lot of indie bands getting signed, a lot of girls getting signed, and I figured that there might be some kind of backlash after that whole thing when, Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker were leaving Warner Brothers at the time, and it was just too much of a shuffle. So I decided to just take my time and meet all the labels and see what was up, and I just wanted to avoid any kind of backlash after all those bands got signed. I didn't want to get caught up in, I just didn't want to get dropped, and I didn't want to lose my A&R person, whoever that might be. So I held tight and waited for the right time.
And Mary Lou, after the couple 7 inches and the EPs, Mary Lou Lord and Martian Saints, and then working on the latest album, you worked with one of you who's considered kind of an idol of yours and one of your best friends, Nick Salmon, right, from Bevis Front?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Now, did he write about 4 songs on the album himself?
Yeah, and then we co-wrote, I think, 3, and then the rest were my own. And yeah, Nick Salmon, he is essentially a band called the Bevis Front. He's an Englishman, and I would say they've got about 14 records out, and he put them all out on his own label called Warren Zoe. And he also publishes a fantastic fanzine called the Ptolemaic Terrascope. And there's a lot of psychedelia that they concentrate on, but they'll also do really cool stuff, like talk about Guided by Voices or Olivia Tremor Control and Neutral Milk Hotel back to back with like Sandy Denny or Tiny Tim or something.
Right, bringing back some of the 60s stuff with some of the newer bands.
So it's great. It's like a small version of Mojo, which is my favorite magazine.
It's one of my favorites too. I love it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I love when they go back to that month, that year, and they show you the charts and everything. It's amazing.
Yeah, so Nick Salmon, he's a fantastic songwriter, and I went over to London. I was there for about a month, and we got going on the record, and I really didn't want to go into this thing alone. I was petrified, really. I played for years in the subway on acoustic guitar and wrote these songs, and I needed somebody to go into this with, and I could think of no better person, no better songwriter that I knew of that was more deserving to go into a project like this with me. It had to be Nick Salmon, so I love him.
Now, you've had quite a few friends play on the record, too. Sean Colvin does a track on there with you, right?
Yeah.
Which is great, and Elliott Smith, who was a label mate of yours on Kill Rock Stars. I think he's great, and always happy.
It's fantastic.
That's Shake Sugary, right? I mean, is that inspired at all by that Jerry Garcia song from his first solo album, Sugary? Because it goes shakin', shakin', sugary.
Right. Well, it's a song written by Elizabeth Cotton, who was this. She was from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and she was actually Pete Seeger's maid, and they didn't know that she was a musician, and they caught her dusting and then playing the banjo, and they were like, "Oh, Libba, we didn't know." So they hooked her up with a record deal, and she was very inspirational to Jerry Garcia. She was his favorite guitar player. Wow. And so she wrote Freight Train, and she wrote that song that I covered on the record called Shake Sugary, and I'm sure that Jerry Garcia was definitely inspired to write that tune by her.
By her, right, for his first solo record, right? That's really interesting.
It's a really sweet song, and I've heard it's a kind of a folky tune, but it's just so lovely that I couldn't avoid putting it on the record. And then, of course, Elliott Smith and his stamp of guitar playing is all over it.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
I love it. Yeah.
How did you end up hooking up, after playing in the subways and playing in Boston, with Tanuvial and Slim Moon from Kill Rock Stars in the first place? How did they find out about you?
Well, I had met Kathleen Hanna over the phone through a friend of mine, so I was kind of friendly with her. And then about a year later, after meeting Kathleen over the phone, I met Tanuvial at a party in Boston. And it was a pretty lame party, so we decided to leave. And she was visiting her parents. They lived in Boston for the summer. And we hung out, and I'd play in Harvard Square, and she'd just come down and watch, and we were girlfriends. And then she sent me a letter saying, "I really miss your voice. Will you make me a tape?" So I made her a tape, and I put it right on a boombox tape. And she said, "Would you mind if we put one of your songs on the compilation?" So I was like, "No, not at all." So they put the tune, it was called Camden Town Ridin', right from the boombox onto their compilation. And then she said, I talked to her about a month later, she's like, "I don't just miss your voice, I miss you. Please come." So I went to Seattle to visit her, and we became, you know, we got reunited, and from there I met Slim Moon and all the other guys at Kill Rock Stars, and a great bunch of people, great label, and I had a really good time in Olympia.
Yeah, it is an excellent label. It's great. And it's all led up to now. I also thought it was really cool you did a Freddie Johnston song, too.
Yeah, well, he's a great songwriter.
You've been a fan of his for a long time, like since Fly and all that?
Yeah. That song, it's not one of his, you know, most popular songs. It's called The Lucky One, but it's a sweetheart of a song. And I had to do it.
And then people consider you somewhat of a bit of a DJ, because you love to play other people's songs, and you're a big music fan, and you love to keep songs from fading into obscurity and making sure people get to hear them.
Well, I think it's important, and it's part of a tradition, especially a folk tradition. And, you know, the lyrical content of folk music is so important, and in the tunes that I cover, I try to you know, keep in mind that they have to be really lyrically based, you know. So it's a tradition, and people, sometimes I get kind of flack for it once in a while, but I remind people that Dylan did it, the Rolling Stones did it, the Beatles did it with all that Gene Vincent, Carl Perkins stuff, and Hank Williams did it. Lovesick Blues, that wasn't even his song, you know, and I don't know who wrote that tune, but whoever it was that wrote it, you know, surely benefited from it in one way or another, and maybe they didn't, but that was back in the day. But these days, you know, with publishing rights and stuff like that, people do benefit from it, and it's a tradition that I think has been lost. And it's not that I can't write, it's just that I have to get this out of my system.
Right.
And that's what those guys did with their first records. And I think in order to be a really terrific songwriter, you first have to be a really big fan, and I'm going through my fan phase now, so.
Yeah, I think it's excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
If you haven't already, you should definitely pick up a copy of Mary Lou Lord's new album, Got No Shadow, and be sure to catch her on tour. Up next, we have the 120 Minutes debut from Pulp to the title track of their new album, This Is Hardcore. It's brand new on 100.